Okay, talking about dosage and consistency, some of our big principles of life, but also training. Um, Big picture that will loop around here is that you have the right to change the dosage to keep the consistency. And what I mean by that is, right, if you get in your mind that I'm going to go and run 3 miles every day at noon, and there's a day where you don't feel like running 3 miles, but you maybe want to run a mile, you can adjust that. Being okay with running 1 mile keeps the consistency. So it is okay to change the dosage to keep the consistency. Instead of this all or nothing mindset where it's like 3 miles or nothing, instead of choosing nothing, are you able to adjust the dosage to what you actually need and can do at that moment? Okay. A lot of these are split down the middle. And again, kind of the uh, cocooners and bus waiters, we see where there's a rift in perspective and personality. Starting out, is it easier to start something or adjust something you've already started? Almost 50-50, right? My guess for these red folks, for the adjusters, is that you are a bit more rigid. And once you get a pattern, you don't want to stray from the pattern. You're the 3 miles works is perfect. I will not do any less. The start something people, those who it's easier to start something, tend to be a little bit more open minded. They tend to be okay with failure and finding their way a little bit more. They're open to starting something. Whether these folks, they start something, success, they feel like they need to keep doing it as is. Okay. Another disconnect here, if you keep doing the same thing the same way, the results become less than. Again, we're almost 50-50. Let me give you an example of what I was thinking of when I read this. If I do 10 bicep curls with 10 pounds on day one, the effects are going to be less than day 100, in which I do 10 bicep curls with 10 pounds. Okay. The key there is the same way. Similarly, if I want to go run to lose weight, if I go run for, if I go run a mile, I'm going to burn more calories that first time I do it than the 60th time I do it because my body gets more efficient. That's what the body's job is. This is what we're going to do. Let's make it easier. So, did anybody here who disagreed with it want to give their perspective? I think what might have happened, feel free to interrupt me, is that we thought of it as kind of a skill. So, for example, Josh is drawing, right? So, if he drew the same thing the same way, he wouldn't have made any progress. He might necessarily get faster at it, but the drawing wouldn't change. Now, if he learned things to change and slightly change his drawing, change the eyes, oh, the eyelashes need to be longer. Now the results are different. So again, we have to be able to keep adjusting things. We want to be able to learn to do it easier and then have that be our new baseline. And oh, we made it easier. And we keep making those steps. Now you understood this one, which was another version of the last question. We develop a tolerance to exercise activity the same way we would for drugs or medication. You understood this, right? If I drink a beer, first time drinking a beer, I might be like, whoa, alcohol. But if I want that same effect in 3 months, I have to keep upping the beers. Pretty soon it's going to be a 12 pack to give me that same result. And we have to be able to adjust the dosage. Okay? We get efficient at whatever we continually do, whether that's starting to move or backing off for movement. A lot of you with the pandemic, right? You've been a bit of an athlete playing sports and you're always used to doing stuff. And that was your normal. And then there was a screeching halt. and you got used to not doing stuff. So that became your normal, right? So we will adjust and adapt. There are times when stopping exercise activity can be helpful. Most of you agree. Again, I believe that these are the rigid minded. We must do this in order to be good, or to feel worthwhile, or to be successful and achieve for the day. There are times when starting, almost there's like two people who are like, I don't know if I agree with that. Again, I'm not saying right now, not saying start exercising at this moment. I'm saying there are times. There are times. Which behavior is hardest for you? Stopping, starting, or being consistent? Look at the orange. Adjust the dosage so that you can stay consistent. The issue, again, that I run into again and again with adults, kids, whomever, is they think they need to do the same thing all the time, or they think that it's a line that works like this. It doesn't. When you consider consistency, you have to think of what you're doing and your actual system of your body. It's not going to have an awesome every day. So it cannot take or do the same level of work. We always got to keep checking in. Now, this idea of consistency, right? The smallest change in perspective, and again, split right down the middle, almost every day. These are have to be every day, almost every day. So if these people blow it, first of all, they're going to be really mad and upset. If it's of their own accord, they're going to feel guilty and shame, and they're going to, probably lash out in some way in some bad mood because they didn't do it. But if we simply change to almost every day, which gives us space to check in with how we're doing, right? Now, again, we could be consistent by changing the dosage. Maybe today isn't a day that run's going to happen. I don't feel bad about it. I just check in the situation and the system. And tomorrow, I see what I can do, right? Listening or shouting. So this next analogy, it made a lot of sense in my head. I hope it came through for most. So basically, I'm saying you have a bucket of ability, and what ability can mean to you is energy and motivation, for example, right? You can only refill it every 3 days. So I wanted to say, what's your take? Are you going to be like, go for it? That's the dump it, go as hard as possible till I drop, and then have a few days where you've got no water. You live in the moment of the splash, or save some for later and tomorrow. You know you've only got 3 days. So instead of just willy-nilly, I'm going to be very careful with how I spend this water, right? And then how do you refill energy and motivation, right? Consistent with a pattern, let it rest, recognize when you really need it. Knowing what you have saved. So instead of looking at what you have to do, right? Knowing how much water you got. In general, if I'm trying to say, hey, how do you refill and recharge your energy and motivation? You know when to stop. You get your rest. You get your nutrition. You are able to bubble off the stress. All that stuff counts. Right? Because I could have the perfect diet and the perfect focused sleep, but if my environment is crazy, then I'm going to mimic that environment. Right? If everybody around me is tossing out water, I'll probably mimic that. Last question. So develop consistency. Would you rather, exactly 50-50, would you rather refill the bucket more often so you can do more, or pour out less so it can last? It's a 50-50 split, looking at the personalities, right? If you know and are certain you can refill the bucket, if there's no waiting period, if there's a certainty there, pour it out, right? But if you're not certain you can refill the bucket, as in a pandemic, when life is upside down, maybe you pour out less so it can last. Adjust the dosage so you can maintain consistency. Maybe you used to pour it out all the way, and now you realize oh, I'm burning myself out. So are you able to adjust? Stop sharing for a moment. In general, just want to kind of get this point up. You can feel free to chat it. Did the bucket analogy make sense about whether to use or conserve? Okay. Thank you. Yes, and it's always a little bit better in my mind, which is why I like to explain things a little bit more. So let me stop recording if you guys want any questions without being videotaped.